In this video, I'll show you how to install the ComputerLab plugin for AccuSQL and then how to point it to an SQL Server database. Now, the ComputerLab plugin is typically installed in a lab on all of the PCs in a lab, and it basically makes each of them their own sign-in station. What I mean by that is the lab computer would be sitting in a locked state. It would be waiting for a student to log in using their AccuSQL credentials. Once they log in, it would unlock the computer. There would be a floating box in the top left portion of the screen. They would go about their normal business. Then they would sign out of that lab computer. It would go back to a locked state and wait for the next student to sign in. There are also rules you can set up. All of the rules for the computer lab are set up in AccuSQL itself. So I could set up a rule to say, after 10 minutes of inactivity, I'm going to go ahead and log the student off automatically, determining that they are no longer sitting at the lab computer. Okay, so I've popped in the key, and then I'm going to run my AccuSQL.exe. That's the installer for the various programs. And I'll get a license agreement that'll pop up. I can review that and close it. And then I'm going to click on ComputerLab here. Okay, and then I'm going to install ComputerLab plugin. That'll open a Windows installer for the program. And I'll click Next. Next again. Accept the license agreement and click Next. And there's your installation path. You can change that or just accept the default. And review your settings. Click Install. Okay, so once it's installed, click Finish, and you can close the program installer here. Okay, and I have an icon here on my desktop for ComputerLab, but the next thing I need to do is tell the ComputerLab where its database is. Okay, and I'm going to do that by going out to the Install folder where it's installed. By default, it's Program Files AccuSQL 12 plugin. Okay, and I have a utility in here that's called SetDataPath. So I'm going to pick that, and I have a SQL Server database waiting out there that I want to connect my lab to. So I'm going to pick SQL Server mode. Okay, and now I have a database here I want to use. It's called David 1201 Tutor. So I'm going to pick that, and then I can X out. Now the next time I open the lab computer, it's going to be in a locked state. Pointing to that database. Okay, now what I want to do is log in as an administrator, which is the same as my AccuSQL login for my database that I'm pointing to. Okay, and this is the back end of the plugin. Now there's not a whole lot to this. I can pick my database location, so I can change that right through the program here. And I can also do a local lab designation. Now, local labs come into play in ComputerLab. For example, I can have one database, and let's say that I have a math lab and a reading lab. Well, I could tell the reading lab computers that they serve up the information for reading lab, and I can tell the math lab that they serve up only math information. Okay? Now, that's good because I can then go back into AccuSQL and I can run reports to see what's going on in my reading lab or my math lab, or both. Okay, so that's where you change the local lab. Okay, and I'll exit this. Actually, I can just return to sign in, and it'll go back to my locked state, and this is what the student would see. The student would then log in to unlock the lab PC. And I can make rules about whether I want them to pick a category, service, instructor, service type. I can bypass this completely if I want to. That's all set up in AccuSQL. Okay, so I'll pick Computer Lab and I'll say it's an online course. I sign in. Now I also have them picking a tutor. That's optional as well. And then the lab computer is now opened up, and Mike Smith's, in this case, is now using that lab PC. He goes about his business and then he signs out. Another option here is called Page Lab Assistant. We have another program that is installed with the computer lab. It's called AccuPager. Basically, you can have the lab assistants set themselves up with their names, and then any student on any of those lab computers can page the lab assistant. So, for example, Mike Smith could page a lab assistant because he's having trouble opening a Word document, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's how that works. But now Mike Smith signs out, it goes back to a locked state, it waits for the next student. So here comes the next student, and they go about their business, and it continues. Okay, so that's how that works. Now I'll go ahead and exit this to show you where the settings are in AccuSQL that control the Computer Lab plugin. So I'll launch AccuSQL, which happens to be on the same computer here. Normally that wouldn't be the case. Your lab PCs will run your computer lab, and then your sign-in station or administrators or your people that want to run reports would be running AccuSQL. Okay, now what I want to do here is change my database, right, because I don't think I'm pointing to that same database. So I'm going to go to my SQL Server here. And then pick the same database that I'm using for the computer lab. Okay, so now I'm pointing my computer lab and my AccuSQL to the same database. Okay, and then I'm going to log in as administrator and go to Setup, Options. And in my Setup Options, I have a setting here for plugin right here. So I'll click that. And these are where I determine the rules about how my plugin operates. So you can go through and review these yourself, but most of them are pretty self-explanatory. I can make rules about what happens when the student logs out. Does it log them out from Windows? Does it just go back to the Computer Lab sign-in screen? I can even restart the computer if I want to. I can publish my status, my Computer Lab status, if I want to an FTP site. Let's see, I've got, if screensaver is off, log in or in out of Computer Lab computers after X minutes of inactivity. So that's what I was talking about before. So that means, you know, because screensaver, you could password protect. But if you don't use screensaver, then you could log off the plugin after X amount of inactivity. So you can review these and try them out and see, you know, how you want to set up the lab PCs according to the way you want. Okay? And that's all I have. Thank you.